You mentioned something earlier I want to go back to about how saying like borderline personality sort of people have a real lack of a sense of self. And does that present differently in genders? And if so, what does that even mean? Like, how does someone grow up not having a sense of self? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, it's a it's largely an internal event, a kind of idea of knowing who you are and what your attitudes and beliefs and values are, and not being easily rocked by events that, negative events or otherwise, or even positive events. There's just this strong sense of, selfhood and a constellation of all the things that you identify with yourself. It's easier to have it at my age because you've got a whole lifetime developing it. But
Right.
younger people, it's much harder because you're still out there testing the water and trying to see, does this fit? Does that fit? I mean, I went through all kinds of experiences to come up with what I have now, for what it's
Yeah.
worth. Um, and but a sense of self is just a kind of bottom line. If you go into your head, you know what your values are. You know when someone is trying to push you away from those values. You know what your attitudes are. You're willing to listen to arguments to the contrary. You're not threatened by them. That's another important thing, that you've got some openness to other points of view, and you can take them in and say, "Oh, that's interesting," but maybe I think differently, and here's why. Um,
Yeah.
all those things kind of go into it, but instead you've got these younger people, in fact, who are just easily rocked. Something happens in the relationship that's a little untoward, and they immediately interpret it as their partner doing something on purpose to spite them or hurt them. They internalize it. They take it negatively and personally. They tend to view other people in terms of there's a narcissistic component here, but viewing other people in terms of how much that other person stresses them. In other words, does that person fit well with their self concept or not? And they're easily knocked off of that sort of fulcrum point. Um,
Right.
that's the person who doesn't have the stronger sense of self, and
Would
that
you,
yeah.
we'll go a little bit adjacent right now. Would you say that that could be, this idea of a lack of sense of self could be exacerbated with social media? Because we were like every day we're looking at so many different opinions, so many different sides. Everyone, you can't even buy a computer without looking at 45 different reviews for so long. Like, does it make it, and not to mention all the distraction, does that make it harder for people to be connected within themselves? Because I've spoken to the male suicide research team at or one of their leads in the University of Scotland, and they're saying one of the main reasons they've identified is these three Ds of disconnection from self, disconnection from others, and disconnection from society. And I'm
Yeah.
assuming all of those things would exacerbate this idea of not having a sense of self.
Yeah, I think that's right. And in fact, Jonathan Haidt and others have done a
Right.
lot of research kind of showing this big uptick in both anxiety and depression, coinciding with the advent of smartphones. It wasn't so much the original old flip phones, but now suddenly you've got a computer in your hand and you got a knee jerk idea, bang, you can find somebody who validates it for you. It doesn't matter how crazy it is. There's somebody out there
Right.
who's going to share it. And so you stop right there. So you've got instant confirmation now for your craziness, which in the old days, you'd either keep it to yourself or you'd get out and be interacting with people who would say, wait a minute, that's crazy. But now, bang, you got instant validation. And so, we have all these conspiracy theories, flat earth. I mean, I can't believe the stuff that's coming out these days.
Yeah.
It just makes me shake my head. Flat earth? Come on.
Yeah. Even
Yeah,
how close the election is in the U.S. right now,
exactly.
I try not to think about. Like, I
Exactly.
think this is very far beyond liberal conservative values and things like that. This is like
Exactly.
an active dancing fascist. Like, he couldn't be presenting as any more fascist, and it's so
Yeah.
close. And
Yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
social media has had a lot to do with that
I know.
as well. I really try to disassociate from that because it's so crazy.
Yeah, I do too, but it's only 35 miles south of here.
Right. Yeah, I can understand that.